More of the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.
All right, welcome back in. 4:41 is the time from the Princeton Orthopedic Associates studios. Great stuff a few moments ago as we continue to remember the life of the great Mike Pettine Sr. by Mike Carey, who was kind enough to hop on board with us. And someone wrote a great article over the weekend, a lot of great articles about the life of Mike Pettine Sr., but I read the one that Tom Moore had to write, and he has a unique relationship with the former football coach at Central Bucks West, and Tom Moore's kind enough to give us a few minutes right now on the Zach Gelb Show. Tom, how are you? Thanks for a few minutes.
All right, thank you, Zach.
Well, first off, you met Mike when you were 6 years old, and you went to work with your father. Just describe to me a little bit about what you remember meeting the football coach.
Yeah, after high school, my dad was a stringer and covered for a couple local papers, so I would tag along to the games, and then after the games, he would talk to the coaches. I remember, like, in an empty gym, I guess he didn't have a real tight deadline, so he could talk to them. So I remember, Pettine always seemed, I mean, he was probably about 6'3", he was lean, but he had such a deep voice, he seemed like he was bigger. Like, if you heard the voice, you would think of like almost like a white Barry White, if you would, in terms of like just a big, thick kind of guy. And I just remember, very, just smart, knowledgeable, and fairly concise. Like, he would sum up what mattered and do it pretty well. And then I started covering when I was 21. I started working at the paper, and when I, was kind of reintroduced to him, he said something about my dad having a lot of insight to the game, and he hoped I measured up, and right out of college, and as I said, he just had a presence and a sort of a whole vibe about him, and I could see, like, with the players and so on, how it could be a little, intimidating. One of the lines at West over the years they've said is they played so well in games because they were easy compared to the practices, and I think there was something to be said for that.
Yeah, we just had Mike Carey on, and he was telling us about that, and he talked about the intense demeanor of the football coach and also the lovable side of him. Whenever he would give a player a smile, they would love it, and then also whenever he could give him a hug, he would go out of his way to do that. It's just amazing when you look back at his career. We may never see a run like this ever again. A guy only had 40-something losses in an extremely long career. Just to see the way that he was able to do it for so many years, Tom, it's remarkable.
Yeah, and to me, the thing that stands out is what the West playbook was not extremely involved. It was not fancy. It was all about repetition and precision and just drilling over and over until everybody knew their assignments, and sort of almost like muscle memory, they would just do it, and that's what happened. I mean, I remember Pettine yelling out during games, same play, and the defense could hear it too, but it's like, what's coming, now stop it, and it's like almost like a double challenge, for the offense. But the most incredible stat to me was in the 90s, his last decade, they were 121-8. He lost 8 games in 10 years, 4 state titles, and were one play away from a 5th state title. So, to have that sustained excellence, ending on 3 state championships and a 45-game winning streak in 97, 98, 99, yeah, that's pretty incredible.
And I never met him, but from all the people that we've been talking to since his passing, it takes a special person that he got offered college job after college job, but he felt like it was his obligation really just to stick around in that community. And that's what makes this story extremely more special than others, when you have an opportunity to go somewhere else and he elected to stay home.
He was a teacher, almost reminds me a little bit of Larry Brown, in that he really liked practice more than the games, and he liked getting kids ready. The games were almost like an afterthought. If he prepared them enough, and he and Mike Carey just did, hours and hours of watching film and so on. So when they went into a district playoff or a state playoff game, especially a state playoff game when they didn't know the school, I mean, sometimes they would have watched film of the next opponent before they even played the last one. Like, that's how prepared, that they were. And did not beat themselves, didn't make mistakes. If you beat a CB West team, typically, you had to be the better team, and you had to outperform them, because rarely would they make mistakes. that would result, cost them a game. That I can remember that happening maybe once or twice, and I guess I did a story 20 years. He started as head coach in '67, so in '87, that was the only year I actually covered. That was my beat, was West, so I covered them for 10 years. Randy Cuthbert played on that team, who played a couple years in the NFL, and I did a story on, kind of Pettine after 20 years and so on. And Cuthbert had told me that during the season he's not one of my favorite people, but after the season I really like him. And after a game, one of the West officials said, well, maybe Randy's not Coach Pettine's favorite person either during the season. But Pettine just smiled because he knew. I mean, he knew the score. He was tough and demanding, but that's the big reason why they were so successful. He was not blind to the perception and the reality.
It's also a cool relationship, and always a father-son. We started talking the conversation, the relationship you had with your dad, and even I'm in this business. I have a great relationship with my dad, who was also able to work in the field. But you take it a step further, and you look at the relationship Mike Pettine Sr. and Mike Pettine Jr. had. It's one of the more interesting ones that you'll find. Mike Jr. played for him, then coached with them, and then had to coach against him in some pretty big games that didn't go Junior's way. That dynamic, the relationship between father and son, that was definitely an interesting one as well, Tom.
Oh, for sure. Well, and Mike, here's the thing that's really interesting. They're not actually senior and junior. Michael has a different middle name, but I think just to make it easier at a certain point, they just started calling each other senior and junior.
Really?
Because it's too complicated, Michael. So the senior was the one everybody knew until Junior got to the NFL as a defensive coordinator and then a head coach. Then it became, Junior. It was Junior, and then the father was the secondary one. But, it had sort of flip-flopped. But Junior was his starting quarterback for 2 years in the early 80s, too. So you had that, that situation. And actually they lost 2 games Junior's senior year. There was a strike, so they didn't play the whole season, but they lost 2 games. And then Junior went to Virginia, and then he helped coach with them. There was a stretch where Dick Beck, who's the coach at North Penn, who's been incredibly successful, and Mike Carey and Junior were all on the same staff together. And that's 4 really knowledgeable men, but that's also 4 very strong-willed individuals. So I used to love being on the sidelines with some of the interactions there, with 3 of them on the sideline, one of them up in the press box, and it was almost like a 3-ring circus. But on the field, they were incredibly efficient and just fun to watch.
Tom Moore with us right now as you remember the life of Mike Pettine Sr. Tom, if you had to pick one memory just to describe Coach real quickly, what would you give it?
Let's see here. Maybe my favorite memory. They lost the '93 state championship game 15-14 after being up 14-0, and they played a team with LeVar Arrington was a freshman. It was a loaded team, North Hills, and the West team was not that good. But West lost on a fourth and goal from the 28 touchdown pass and then ensuing 2-point conversion. So they were just devastated afterwards. So they did the press conference, and I went over to Pettine just to say hi and congratulate him, and I shook his hand, and he wouldn't let my hand go. I guess it was sinking in what had happened, because at West they didn't lose games that way; they won games that way. So I got to know him pretty well and talk to him about football when I covered him, and sometimes when I didn't. And also, real quick, if I could, he would tell me sometimes I'm moving this guy from guard to center this year, and then as the season got closer, I'd say, "Oh, I heard you moved him from guard to center." And he'd get real serious and he'd say, "Who told you that?" I said, "You did." And then he would laugh and smile. A little bit of paranoia. You don't want to let It's okay if I tell people, but I don't want there being moles or leaks around here. So
it's funny. It's just personality from everyone that we talk to. It's just the intensity and then also the kind side to him. It's really remarkable and just shows the special person he is, Tom. It really is.
Oh, for sure. I know there's a guy who played for him who's a captain of the '79 team, Jeff Trauger, who was ordained or whatever, indoctrinated as a judge this year, and he sent me a letter. And Pettine showed up at his swearing in and told him how proud he was of him. And that's a pretty neat thing, because he was almost revered. And I know people that even were writers that when you would cover him, if you played for him, it's hard to get out of that mode of coach player. I didn't play for him. I went to a rival high school, but I knew him and I saw his teams when I was in high school too. But yeah, just the coach, the best coach I've ever seen at the high school level in any sport. really was remarkable.
Wrapping up with Tom Moore. Quickly, Tom, since we have you here, with this Embiid stuff, now he's out indefinitely. We'll hear more from Brett Brown today at 5:15, the press conference that you'll be at before the game tonight up against the Warriors. Just this entire situation, the one word that really comes to mind is just ineptitude, because that's what you're seeing right now. I just still don't get how they let him play Embiid in the Houston game, and now ever since just the handling of this injury from day to day, now being out indefinitely. You're around the team. Just how do you interpret the situation that goes on, and where do we go wrong here?
Yeah, I mean, it's just not being honest and giving you elements of the truth. I mean, for weeks it was he's out 2 games at a time, and he told us last week they said it would be 2 to 3 weeks, and he wasn't happy with how it was handled because people kept asking him when he was going to play, and he knew he wasn't going to play, but he couldn't say anything. So I don't know why you wouldn't just come out, and that's why finally today they came out and said that he's got soreness and swelling after following Thursday's practice, and now he's out indefinitely. So I don't know why they didn't say that to start with. And even the Simmons thing, they didn't tell us about the January 23rd scan that it wasn't, complete healing. I don't know why. It's going to come out, and you're going to look bad. They're very reactive instead of proactive, and there's no reason that you don't get ahead of these stories, and that's why they look so bad.
I know Colangelo said he had some regrets, specifically talking about this injury and how they classified it. I think it was Marshall Harris who asked the question at the press conference. But do you think they realize not only how foolish they look, but how bad they make their head coach look? Because today they're going to put Brett Brown up in front of the media, and he's going to have to face the music. And I know Brett gets paid a lot of money, and that's part of the job. But even going back to Hinkie, they've not been very fair to Brett Brown, Tom.
Yes, he has been the face of the franchise for 4 years, essentially. So whenever anything happens, for instance, last year when Okafor was suspended 2 games after, the series of off-the-court things that happened, Hinkie was in New York and wouldn't talk to us. So Brett Brown had to get up for 10 minutes and talk. And today, we've asked to talk to Brian Colangelo. I'm not sure. We're hopeful, but we don't know if we will. But if we don't, the only availability is Brett Brown for 10 minutes from 5:15 to 5:25. And at a certain point in there, he's going to say, I want to talk about the Golden State Warriors. And I don't blame him because he's, they give the injury report, a PR person does, not him. So I don't know how much he necessarily knows and also or how much he's allowed to say. So it puts him in a very awkward position, and I don't blame him. I would not be happy to. I've been disappointed in Brian Colangelo's lack of availability, and I thought he would be, available to us a lot, and I thought he would be more helpful, and he has not been. And, the fans notice it too because when we don't get stuff, that means they don't get stuff. And, it has not gone well so far, and a lot of it is of his own doing.
And they'd be very stupid not to give you Colangelo today. If they don't give you Colangelo, they've learned nothing from this entire incident that has occurred here in this last month. They have to give you Colangelo today. Like, they will look so bad if they don't give you Colangelo. And then also, just with Brett, if I'm Brett today, he's going to get the questions, and they're definitely deserved, but they have to give you Colangelo today, Tom, basically. They just have to.
I mean, I would think and hope so. I texted him, and I was hopeful, and he texted back, and it sounded iffy. So, we will see. We'll certainly double-check with the PR director who supposedly was trying to get him, but we will see. But, yes, you're right. If you don't get him, then literally the 48-minute press conference Friday was just a farce.
Thank you, Tom. I'll see you tonight. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks a lot, Zach. Take care.